What's up, guys? This is Tony with Salt Strong, and I wanted to quickly show on the satellite maps here what would be the best types of areas to target based on the species that you're going after. So typically when we go out on a trip, we want to catch a slam. You know, redfish, snook, sea trout. Depending on your region, the slam might vary. But for this video, I want to talk about snook, redfish, and sea trout. Now, the software that I'm using here, this is our Smart Fishing Spot software that we have developed here at Salt Strong for our insider members. So it's a very useful resource to help our members, you know, when they're planning their trips, and also, you know, once they get out there on the water, they can use this software on their phone or tablet to help them, you know, dial in where they want to fish. So what we have here, as you can see, we have all these different layers that you can use: oyster beds, seagrass. It'll populate those on the map. Also smart spots, which will show the best types of spots to go to based on the conditions. So based on the wind direction, based on the tide, moon phases, all that comes into play to help pick those spots out. So what I want to do here is, let's go ahead and click on oyster beds. Since you can already see, you know, this area has some seagrass. If the map was a little bit poor quality image, that's when you would want to populate some more layers, but you can clearly see the seagrass there. And what I've done is I've clicked on oyster beds, and that populated some oyster beds in the area, because this can definitely help if you are trying to pick spots based on the type of species that you're going after. So the first species, let's go ahead and talk about sea trout. When I'm targeting sea trout, the main areas that I like to target them are going to be out in the grass flats in about you know, 1.5 to 3 feet of water. When the tide goes out, you're going to want to focus, you know, further out into the flat where it's a little bit deeper, and fish those potholes out in the grass. So as you can see here, this camo sort of splotchy pattern where the grass is broken up a little bit, more of a broken up type of bottom, that would be more ideal, because those trout can hide, you know, right in the edge of the grass of those potholes and make it an ideal spot to ambush their food as it goes by. When you have really thick grass, you know, not a lot of holes in the grass or anything like that, that can make it a little bit more difficult to fish, and also it just makes it a little bit more congested and harder to dial in where those fish are. But when you have potholes out there, that makes easy targets to cast to try to get on some trout. And then as far as snook go, when I'm targeting snook, I like to find choke points or areas where you have current wrapping around or going into. So let's say this sort of inside area, for example. Also, you have combinations of structure here. Since we do have the oyster beds populated out here, you can see that you have some oyster beds right around here. You have these islands and oyster beds kind of close to each other. So if you have current cutting through here and you have a little bit of a deeper trough that runs through there, that can be an ideal type of spot to find snook. Also, if you have like a choke point in between two islands like this, that can be ideal, or even a point where you happen to have some deeper water. Let's see if we have a point here. Has a little bit deeper water wrapping around. So it looks like you might have a little bit of a deeper trough running around this point. So that could be an ideal type of spot for snook as well. Now also, if you have water pushed up close to the mangroves on points like this, that's going to be ideal for snook also. Pitching lures up into the mangroves, into the pockets, ideal type of spot for snook. And then as far as redfish go, redfish are usually going to be pushed into some of these, you know, muddier coves. They're more of a scavenger type of species, as opposed to snook and sea trout, which are more ambush predators. Redfish like to just cruise muddy areas looking for crabs, shellfish, snails, clams, things like that that are easy to just pick up, you know, nice easy meals. And also you'll find shrimp in some of these backwater coves as well, depending on the time of year. So again, backwater coves, 1 to 2 feet of water, depending on the tide, they could be pushed up right up to the shoreline, or if the tide's out, they could be just cruising around in the mud and the softer bottom. And always hit the points when you go into spots like this, because you can be fishing right out here, get some sea trout, fish closer to the point, possibly pick up a snook, and then get a little further in and possibly pick up a redfish. Then as far as lure selection goes, just to keep it simple, you know, I don't want to be switching lures based on the type of species that I'm going after. So if there's one that could do it all, it would definitely be a paddle tail, such as our 3.5-inch Slam Series paddle tails. They can work year-round, any water conditions. As far as color goes, I would go with a lighter color if the water's pretty clean, such as our Slam Shady color. Works really well in clean water. Or if the water's a little bit dirtier, you know, you're fishing an outgoing tide, water's churned up, I would go with a darker color such as our Gold Digger color, which is black and it has some gold flash in there. Gold works really well in dirty water because it doesn't require as much light to flash. So that's why it could be a great color in that sort of off color or murky water. And how I have those lures rigged up will depend on, you know, where I'm fishing. If I'm fishing out in the flats where it's a little deeper, maybe it's, you know, 3 or 4 feet or deeper, I'll have it rigged up on a jig head. That'll get it down faster into the potholes and into the grass. And if I'm fishing closer to the structure, you know, closer to the mangrove shorelines, I would go with a weedless setup, you know, like our 3/0 1/8 ounce Haas Helix hook. Weedless setup has some weight on there so you can skip it up under the mangroves and get that lure in the strike zone. Now, if you're interested in any of the lures that I mentioned, we do sell them on our shop page at fishstrong.com. You can pick them up there, and Insider members, keep in mind you do get an exclusive discount on tackle and gear, so definitely be sure to take advantage of that. Now, again, keep in mind the areas that I showed in this video, they're just examples of types of spots. You know, doesn't necessarily mean I would go exactly to these spots when I get out there on the water, because other variables come into play. You know, what direction is the wind blowing? Is it incoming tide or outgoing tide? What time of year is it? You know, what time of day is it? All those variables can come into play to choosing ideal spots and to consistently get on fish. And this is where I see a lot of people struggling, is putting all those variables together to pick the right spots. And that's where we come into play. You know, that's what we do here at Salt Strong, is we give our members the tools they need to consistently start catching more fish. Everything from the software that you see that I'm using here. You know, it shows the weather forecast that can help you dial in, you know, where you should be fishing. Also, we have smart fishing tides on here where you can pull up a tide station. It'll give you a strike score. It'll give you the best feeding times. Also, the map, which is a huge game changer in planning out your spots. Being able to use all these details on the maps to dial in on good areas, such as what I was showing here in this video. Also, we have various online courses that help our members dial in what they should be doing when they actually get to a spot, and also, you know, based on the type of species they're going after, what are the best tactics for going after those species. And lastly, like I said before, huge discount on tackle and gear, which obviously you need to get out there on the water and catch some more fish. So if you are interested in that, definitely head over to saltstrong.com/pricing to see if you're a fit for the Insider Club. So that will wrap up this video. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below.